Hi, my name is Sofia Xavier, and today I'm very happy to be here on the show. And I'm an NLP and hypnosis practitioner, soft skills trainer, Jungian coach, and published author. And today we're going to be talking about my experience in Asia, 9 years of an incredible journey in China, Thailand, and also a bit of how I transitioned from being a translator, interpreter, and then transitioning to self-development and soft skills.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premier destination for exclusive insights into the journeys of remarkable individuals. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a guest whose story is as captivating as it is inspiring. Now, Sofia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and it's a pleasure to be here and to meet you finally.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. If people know what we're about to embark on and the people you've met and the things you've seen and the things you do, oh my, they would actually understand why I'm so starstruck right now.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching right now, thank you so much for choosing the Online Prosperity Show as your podcast and show of choice. Now, I want you to imagine transitioning from maybe a structured world of language translation into a very dynamic world of personal development and coaching. That's exactly, what our guest, Sofia Xavier, has gone through. Now, with a background rich in linguistic and cultural immersion, Sofia has seamlessly blended her experiences and she's made a thriving career out of all of this and helping other people with soft skills training and also life coaching. And there's things that I mentioned earlier on. Sofia actually is so good at what she does. She has collaborated with my all-time legendary hero, Jackie Chan, during her time in China. And it's not every day that you meet somebody with such a unique blend of experiences. So in this episode, we're going to be diving into Sofia's transformative journey, exploring her past roles, her current endeavors, and also the methodologies that she utilizes, and also some of the invaluable lessons that she has gathered along the way. And we'll also uncover her diverse background that has actually shaped her approach in coaching and how you, as a cherished listener, can draw all of these parallels and also formulate, a story and a path of your own based on her experiences. So stay tuned as we jump into what I think is going to be a very engaging conversation that's obviously filled with humor, professionalism, and a profound insights. And knowing who she's been in contact with, I'm still shaking in my boots just having Sofia on the show right now. But I want you to actually let Sofia's story leave you inspired and also reflect on your own journey. Now, Sofia, please take me out of my misery. I mean, I'm still really, really starstruck and shocked right now. Tell us a little bit about your journey so far, especially, what brought you to China and how you got around to then meeting Jackie Chan.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Very generous of you to say all of those things about me. It's beautiful because I now live in Asia for about 9 years, right? So it's been about 9 years. It will be a decade next year. And I feel the exact same way, it's just like, how come such a long time has passed by since I moved to China initially, and then eventually to Thailand, where I currently live. And initially, I moved to China as a student. So I was 19, almost 20 when I moved to China. It was an exchange program. So my university in Portugal had 2 years of an exchange program. The first year being in Beijing. So Beijing Language and Culture University, and the second year in Macau Polytechnic Institute. And so I ended up just going full in, no questions asked. I was pretty much an explorer in that sense. I always loved different cultures. I always felt that calling to meet new people, new cultures, new languages. And so that's how I moved to China. But even before that, right? So when I decided what to study for my bachelor's, I think I always had these two sides of me. So one of them was that explorer that I just mentioned. So I always wanted to know more about Asia, in particular China, and on the other hand, I really wanted to discover, how our mind works, and to really understand more about myself and others. So that's the self-development part as well. I was always very much the person that loved writing. I used to love writing poetry. Back then, I had a poetry blog. I remember writing already. So all of that, I think I really see it from now. I see it as two different sides of me. The one that he's really into self-development, wants to discover more about the mind. And the other side of me that wants to discover the world, and Asia always had these, it always made me feel really curious, because I think in Europe, we don't really have that much accurate information about Asia, I would say. From now having lived, in Asia for quite a long time, I really see that whenever I go back, there are still the same, ideas that many times are limiting beliefs about China, about other Asian countries. It's just a very limited perspective in a way. And so I think that curiosity, it's what led me to study languages, and eventually that's how I moved to China and never really left Asia, right? So since then, I just kept staying. My mom is not happy about it. I think my parents really thought I would be staying for a couple of years and then move back to Portugal. But I just felt this calling to stay, and it's been a really interesting adventure.
Absolutely. And congratulations. I mean, not a lot of people can say that about themselves, and having found, something that they are really interested in. But let's go back a little bit to your upbringing in Portugal. First of all, you did mention that there's an inaccurate representation of Asia. What was it like growing up in Portugal for yourself? And, what sort of ideas were you implanted with, especially about Asia and what you now experience right now?
Yeah, so I was actually born in Germany. My parents lived in Germany for a while as well, and so I ended up moving to Portugal. I was still quite young, and grew up in Portugal already. My family is Portuguese, so I'm 100% Portuguese. But I already had that, I think, in terms of my family already kind of they had lived abroad. So I remember my mom says that I used to spend a lot of time with a Turkish neighbor, that I really liked her food. And, my first few words were in German. And then, so I think I kind of had that environment, right, from the start, of being exposed to different cultures. And my parents' colleagues were also, from different countries. And that kind of, I think when we are children, and particularly, at such a young age, we are like sponges, right? We absorb everything from the environment. And even if on a conscious level, we may still not be able to process it or to express it, but on a subconscious level, there's a lot happening, right? And I really believe that those early experiences truly shaped me in a way, and that would eventually grow into something bigger. Now, I grew up in the countryside, in Portuguese countryside in the northeast of Portugal. It's a rural area. That was probably one of the biggest differences, that you could go from a rural area to a big city like Beijing or Shanghai. It's just like boom. It's just like a huge difference, right? But I love it. I loved every second of it. And that contrast was so interesting as well for me. It made me expand in so many ways. And I think growing up, I always really wanted to travel. My family was not much into traveling, apart from that time that they spent abroad. But I think I always had this, in me. And so when I moved to China, and then I started to travel within China, within, other parts of Asia, that was just so interesting. It was just a part of me that I wasn't, like fully experiencing yet while in Portugal. But in Portugal, still while I was there, so I studied in my hometown, and then there was this period where I had to choose a career, right? I had to choose my studies. What am I going to do with my life, right? And I think I remember saying, like, either psychology or Asian studies. At the time, there was these two big possibilities. I had no idea what was Asian studies. It seemed so fancy in a way, and very abstract at the same time, because it's just like Asia is such a big continent, and I remember studying about Japan, about China, India, like so many different cultures. And I was studying Japanese and Chinese at the same time, which was also very interesting, but very confusing at the same time. And so I think that the fact that in Portugal back then, I think there was a bit of pessimism, or pessimistic views in terms of psychology, and finding a job as a psychologist or exploring that was a bit, for my family, it didn't seem like a good option at the time. And so I ended up thinking, okay, I think this seems fun. The program already includes 2 years of exchange program, so I will be traveling, I will be exploring something abroad as well. And eventually that will make sense. And so I just trusted the process. A lot of people are like, why did you choose this? And I'm like, curiosity. I was just curious about it. And that's a bit of how I live my life, I think, till to this day. It's just like, if there's a sign of excitement and curiosity, there's usually something there for me. Even if it's not totally clear yet, it will eventually make more sense as I go.
Absolutely. I quite like that, because so many people want to wait until the fruit is fully formed. They don't want to put the seed in the ground, or, experience the wonder of growth, and, realize the actual experience in and of itself. And I think they miss out on a lot. And look at this now. You just trusted the process, and you ended up in a place that now, has helped you grow, and things of that nature. But I was actually just thinking to myself, obviously from being a rural, girl, to then going to where everything is made, because everything is made in China, right? You can only imagine that you were looking at things in a whole different light. What were some of the highlights that you came across as soon as you entered Beijing, such a big city?
Well, the most interesting thing, as you were mentioning that contrast, is that I think the largest market in my hometown is a big Chinese market, right? So that starts right there. It's just like, on the weekend, late in the evening. It's always open, like they work on holidays. It's a lot of, products, diversity of products, really affordable prices, really convenient, right? So I think all of that is what I experienced then in China, but on a totally different level, because then the scale is absolutely immense, right? um, I think that one of the things that I noticed, like, first in China, well, apart from the spicy food, which we'll can go there later, was the fact that, a lot of things were open 24 hours per day, like convenience stores, for example. Like, it's just the convenience of things, right? So there's a word in Chinese, which is "fangbian." Fangbian means literally convenient, right? But it's more than a word. It's more than the convenient in English. It's a whole concept. Is like a whole philosophy, right? It's that idea that things are made easy and accessible for everyone. And of course, the fact that it's a big population makes everything, for example, let's speak about deliveries. Deliveries in China are very affordable, very quick. You order something the same day or the next day, you get it, right? So that was something that back in Portugal, especially if we speak 9 years ago, it was definitely not there at all, right? I don't remember ordering things and they showing up like the same day or the next day, right? So that speed that China has, and especially at that time, there was a big contrast to what I was used to. I had lived in Lisbon as well, which was already, it's the capital of Portugal. So it's not that I had just been exposed to, the countryside. But even Lisbon, even nowadays, when I go back to Lisbon, I still feel like the pace of life is so slow. People are, it's just the whole feeling is slow. There's, it kind of triggers me in a way, because I'm like walking on the streets and I go fast, and then I remember I'm in Portugal. It's just like things are slow and it feels good, right, in a way. But at the same time, is this big contrast, because when you are in these big cities and you are exposed to so much going on, events, right? I think events was also something that, I think even in Bangkok right now, where I live, there's always so much going on, so much happening. You really need to be careful not to be distracted, right? That's one thing, because there's just a lot going on. But at the same time, it's so diverse, so interesting. You get to meet people from so many different parts of the world. And I remember when I arrived in Beijing in the beginning. So my college at the time, BLCU, is known for being like a university. I think it was the first university that opened up for foreigners in China. And so it has like more than 150 or something around that of countries, nationalities represented. And I remember just walking around, and it was just this beautiful diversity that I've never, came across before. I never experienced that. I remember I had two classmates from Korea, and I spent an entire semester thinking they were from South Korea, right? But turns out they were from North Korea, and I think that was very interesting, because there's not a lot of countries where you would meet North Koreans, for example, and have these opportunity to have an exchange. Then I had, classmates from Egypt, Japan, South Korea, some European countries. I think European countries and the US wasn't as represented there for some reason. We were more like a minority. But there were still, some people from those regions. But I remember, islands that I've never heard about, like Samoa at the time. I remember meeting them, and then we had these beautiful events that the college organized, which was like each country would organize a stand, right, with their like products from their countries, some activities. People would dress up in the costumes, the traditional costumes from their countries. So it was this beautiful interaction of cultures, and it was so, so rich. Different languages. I remember, learning more Spanish, because I speak a bit of Spanish, but at the time it wasn't that good. Getting really, in touch with people from Latin and South America, for example. It was just this incredible exposure to the world that then I believe really shaped me also to just to be a world citizen, right? To really now see the world as a much smaller place in a way. And be able to travel anywhere and really feel home. I get that, the kind of feeling. So
Absolutely. You know what I like about, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. You know what I like about that is like every time you are waking up in the morning, it's like you're waking up to a cross section of the whole world, and it was just right there at your doorstep. And what I really like about such an environment is the diverse culture, the diverse knowledge that comes around from that, and also the humanity that draws out, because it really then gets to show you that there are other people in pockets of the world that are living, surviving, and functioning without you even either knowing about it or having an influence in that. And that really, really opens you up to, being present and being human, and very little entitlement in life. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it.
it does, and it gives you so much social flexibility. I think you can expose me to any environment now that I'm just super kind of comfortable moving around, talking to people from different countries. Like, I already have an awareness, different countries, I have a slightly different approach, just socially and professionally. That gives you so much of a leverage. Like, it just gives you a lot of those social and soft skills as well, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's interesting because recently I went to the UN, like to the United Nations headquarters for the Commission on the Status of Women, which is, I'm participating in a project. I'm part of an NGO related to women and women leadership. And so we went there, and that's the kind of feeling that I had back in Beijing. This United Nations with full of people from different parts of the world, and just this incredible diversity, and everyone interacting with each other. And it feels like the world suddenly is just, so close to us. Everything is there. People are so different, but yet, we communicate and we exchange, and it's so rich.
And I'm supposing that's the reason why China has really managed to expand, because you can imagine when they bring in people like yourself, and you stayed there, like you said, for over a decade. And can you imagine whatever input and information that you're leaving, and there will be other people that are also doing the same, whatever that leaves there, the people in China would actually start incorporating that. If it works, they keep; if it doesn't, they ditch, which just makes them a very refined people. And I wish most of the world will be like that. And yeah, it's quite interesting that is the experience that you sort of had. So what was it then like? You did mention the food was a little bit spicy and things like that. I don't know if you go to the restaurant there, do you say, can I have any other food that's not Chinese food? And do they understand that? Or
Yeah.
things.
Well, so in the beginning, I remember arriving in the campus, and first of all, there was this terrible pollution. So that's the first picture that I have in my mind. Back in 2016, that was like pollution in Beijing was a big thing. We had to wear masks, right? And so I have this first picture on the campus, like a lot of pollution. And then there was this little food stand where I went with a friend. Like, we didn't sleep much in the trip. It was like, I don't know, 30 hours with layovers and all of that to Beijing. And it was our first time in Beijing, so we had no idea. It was just like we had someone waiting for us in campus, right? So that was good. But then we went by ourselves to explore campus, and campuses in China are like cities. They are not like, the concept of a university in Portugal is like you have buildings that are many times far from each other, and each building is a faculty, and they're separate, and they have they are connected in a way, but it's not that everything is like closed, and that you have all the faculties close to each other. So they are even in different parts of the city many times. And in China, like the campus is just like a huge space. You have gates, right? So everything is closed. There's security, there are gates. There's just this sense of strong community. It's a beautiful experience. Anyway, it just feels like it's a city within a city, right? But going back to your question, because now I was drifting away from that. Food. So I remember going to that stand. So we were exploring in the campus and went to that food stand. And the lady who was serving the food, she asked me, do you want spicy, right? But I didn't understand what she said. So because she had that very thick Beijing accent, and I had some, Mandarin classes back in Portugal, but it was not enough at all, especially for Beijing accent. And so I just said, yeah, right? Because I just didn't know what she asked. So I was like, in Chinese, she asked, yao la ma? And I said, I said, yao yao, or do it, something like that. But like, I just went with it. And then the moment I tasted it, oh my God, I couldn't. Because in China, you have two different types of spices. Well, two main, of course, you have more, but there's la and there's ma. And ma is the kind of spicy that numbs your mouth, numbs everything. It's a bit like, what do you call it? The Japanese, the green thing, what do you call it? I forgot the name.
The Japanese pepper.
I can't remember the
jalapenos.
exact.
Is it jalapenos?
No. I mean so there's this
wasabi.
paste. Wasabi, exactly. So it's a bit like wasabi, but still different. Okay, it's red and so it numbs your mouth. It numbs your senses. It gives you headache. And me in Portugal, we don't eat spicy. Like we say we eat some spicy, but we don't actually. It has nothing to do with the level of spiciness that Chinese food has. Some of it, right? Because it also varies a lot from north to south, east, west. But yeah, it was that first experience, and I couldn't eat anything. I was hungry. I couldn't eat any of it, and it was my fault because I just said yes, right? And that was, I remember, one key memory from the very beginning. But then after that, I think the more I learned to speak Mandarin better, and of course you learn through those experiences, right? Which is so rich, so interesting, because I think from the beginning, I really had this beginner mindset. And I was like, I don't care. I'm in a new country. No one knows me. I will just, I will look dumb. I will look stupid sometimes, but that's totally fine. And so I would just speak, in Mandarin. I would speak Mandarin with a lot of foreigners, which is something interesting. I remember in that phase, I wasn't getting along with a lot of foreigners, with a lot of Chinese, I mean. So it was mostly foreigners, but we all kind of were studying Mandarin. So our classes were fully in Mandarin. We were, speaking in Mandarin. And I think I intentionally at that time got along mostly with people from Asia. And their English skills weren't that good. So they tended to speak Mandarin to me more. Whereas, I remember some classmates who tended to get along with people from the US, from some Western countries, that would just be in their comfort zones, more like in a bubble. And for me, I think I got that exposure very early on in the sense of, just I remember doing an interview in Mandarin in the first year, like in the first couple of months, and my Mandarin was not good at all. But I remember I would just go and do it, and sometimes it was awkward, sometimes I wouldn't get, to it wasn't get that good, but it would be okay, and I would learn from it. And I think after a year in China, my Chinese skills were wow, like completely, different from when I arrived there. So it was just very intensive experience.
Absolutely. And obviously, you then went on and became a translator, a professional Chinese translator. That means, the learning started happening and you applied your knowledge. So tell us a little bit about those days as being a professional translator for.
Yeah, I started working as a translator while I was still studying. So I think from my second year, I was already doing translation. And that helped a lot to learn the language, actually, which is interesting, right? But I started to work with media companies, more specifically with Chinese TV series. So I was translating subtitles, right? And when you translate subtitles, you need to watch the episodes, right? So you need to like translate and then go and watch and see if it fits that space and that time that you have for that, and then continue and then go back and check and all of that. And so in that process, you learn so much. And that was, I think, essential for me to really become fluent in Mandarin, because it exposed me to listening. It exposed me to, very like, let's say, not only the tones in Chinese, right? Because Chinese is a tonal language, but also expressions, a lot of things that we were not learning in school because they were too advanced, and I was already being exposed to them. So when I would actually get to study them in class, I was like, oh, I remember these from the TV series that I'm watching and that I'm translating. And I love to watch the TV series. So for me, that wasn't work. Of course, you have responsibilities and all of that, but it just felt very natural. And so I was already, making money, translating from that very beginning. And then I think it was just very natural. I started to get some opportunities for interpretation as well. So eventually I did an internship at the embassy of Portugal in Beijing, which was also very interesting. Then I got another internship in a language school in Beijing, and eventually started to work as a medical interpreter. I worked with a crypto company as well, a crypto exchange, where I would do the proofreading. So it was very interesting because I think learning a language really opens up a world of possibilities for you. And one of those opportunities was exactly working with your hero, Jackie Chan. So that
Wow.
yeah.
Absolutely. Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? Oh, that was my favorite when I watched Rush Hour. So how did you end up working with Jackie Chan?
So I remember being in my apartment in Shanghai, and it was like, I think it was the weekend, and I was supposed to work the whole next week, right? I was working at a family club back then. That's the thing. In China, I think you get so many different experiences, which on one hand can be distractive, but on another hand, it gives you this ability to experience so many different things and develop your potential in many different ways, right? So I was in my apartment in Shanghai, and I received this text message on WeChat from like a friend of a friend. So it was a connection that I had in Shanghai. And he happened to be really well connected with the movie industry in Shanghai because he used to be an actor. And so he told me, Sofia, are you available next week? Because we need teacher, a Portuguese teacher. And I was like, no, you know that I work during the week, so I cannot really make it. I'm sorry, right? And it could be ended right there, right? If he didn't continue. But he was like, are you sure? And I'm like, you know very well that I work. Like, I just said like, no, it's not possible. It's too short minute. I cannot really leave my job, right? And then he said, are you sure it's Jackie Chan? And all of a sudden I was like,
I'm
I'm
available.
available.
Yes, yes, yes. I can imagine. I
Really
can.
interesting. And, then I remember going back to my manager at the time, and it was literally like, I think a couple of days before I had to be on set. And I just told her, I had this incredible opportunity. I need to go and all of that. And then she was like, no, you cannot make it. I'm sorry. We cannot find anyone to replace you. And, we just need you here. And she was very strict with that. And then I remember trying and going around and asking another colleagues to do my shifts and all of that. But it was tough. But I remember I made it, right? And I mean, it was not possible to miss something like that, right? And then I ended up going for the set. Before that, I had a couple of days where I was sending audios, and it was more of virtual class, but not really live. It was just sending resources and supporting him with the accent mostly, because he was shooting a commercial for Brazil. And then I went on set and had these one-on-one classes where I would be basically in between shots, right? While he was resting, I would come to him and he would practice. So it was really interesting. And I got to see him doing, the shooting, and it was a really interesting experience from that perspective. Um, and I also remember, so I don't speak Brazilian Portuguese as my mother tongue, right? My mother tongue is European Portuguese because I'm from Portugal. So I remember at the time I had to, first of all, teach myself Brazilian Portuguese to then teach Jackie Chan, which was also very interesting.
Absolutely. I can only imagine. But look at this, Sophia. You left all of this now, and you were being paid to watch TV, literally, doing the translations, and you got to meet celebrities like Jackie Chan and everything else. And you transition now from being a professional Chinese translator to becoming a life coach. And that's very fascinating. What sparked this career shift?
Well, I think I always knew that I loved languages and I love the process of learning languages. But the work as a translator or interpreter or, proofreader even, it wasn't really what I wish I was like passionate about, right? So it was this feeling of I do this for money, I do this and it's interesting. I mean, there were really interesting opportunities. I would get along with really interesting people. And it had the advantage of allowing me to work from anywhere. So that was a big plus. I could, do a lot of different things, and that was my first experience working, like as a digital nomad and working remotely. Right, it was very flexible. But on the other hand, I really knew deep down that it wasn't really what ignited that passion within me. Right. And I think throughout all this process, ever since I moved to China, I had, and even in Portugal, I think a few years back, because I had I had to deal with some health issues back in Portugal. So I was diagnosed with arthritis at the time, and it was really, painful on many levels, and also very limiting, right? Because I remember studying Chinese and my first Chinese teacher telling me, you cannot learn Chinese because you cannot handwrite. Because at the time I couldn't hold a pen for a big period of my time because it was so painful. And so back then, I remember I went through, I think, what you would call a spiritual awakening, right? So a very profound, like, catharsis, like a lot of pain, a lot of things coming to the surface. I also lost some people in my life, like, some people died, right? There was a lot of pain involved. And so I started this self-development journey there. And when I moved to China, I started really consuming a lot of self-development content. I remember, hiring a coach, being more exposed to, getting to know myself, because I was already, knowing, like, getting to know so much about other people, about myself, me in a different environment. I think moving to a different country at such an early age, such a young age, you really grow a lot. It's just a big, like, transformation that you go through. And it was this natural metamorphosis, right? So I think I went through this process of working a lot on myself, going through different experiences, meeting different people. And eventually, the more I healed myself, I understood that I was not only healing, like, emotionally and, on, like, mentally, emotionally, but also physically. So the physical body was also transformed, and I healed. And my doctors back in Portugal, they always said, like, there's nothing to do about it because it's a chronic disease, cannot really do much about it. And the moment I did those transformations, I started to heal
Wow.
physically. And that was the key turning moment for me, because it was like, wow, I can change so much if I change my mind. If I start working on myself, then I need to start sharing this with other people, right?
Mm.
So it was this very strong calling to start. I think the moment you are given a gift,
Yes, yes, yes.
and it felt so natural to me. I was already the kind of friend that would give deep, profound advice, or, just being very supportive. I was always very empathetic. So it all made sense on a whole deeper level. And
Mm.
then I started, like, studying first, right? I got certified as a coach, and all of this kind of in the background, right? So I was still doing translation, proofreading, and so on. But I was always very invested because I wanted to learn it for myself in the first place. I think I always wanted to learn it first for myself. And then it was very organically. It was like, oh, now I can do something about this. And I started to get involved into self-development communities in China, do talks. Like, I was being invited to do, some workshops, some webinars, and things like that. And then everything was just very organic. It's just like, I think when you find your center, in a way, like, you find this deeper sense of purpose, everything starts to align. That's
Mm.
how I've experienced it.
Now,
Um,
now, when you started, Sophia, and thank you so much for sharing that journey with us, because when you started, you were telling us, oh, I came here and I didn't quite know how it's now a decade and things of that nature. But I would now venture and say, knowing that you healed, you transformed, and you used the word metamorphosis in a place where back home everybody else was baffled with what was going on, and yet this place was the source of joy, healing, and alignment, and everything else that came along with it. Even I wouldn't want to leave.
yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And everything, I think it was meant to be. I don't think it should have been any other way. And it was not easy. I think sometimes I look back and I say, "Oh my God, it was this beautiful experience." Back then, sometimes I was crying in the room, and it was just so many experiences. And I think when you are going through those transformations, sometimes you cannot see clearly. I think you need that perspective. So now looking back, I look at that and wow, I grew so much. It was beautiful. It was a lot of transformation. But when you are leaving it, it's just this dark cocoon, right?
Yeah.
So you are like you can see anything.
Blanket. Yeah.
It feels so uncomfortable and so tight, and
I
you
know.
cannot move. But there's a lot going on when you are going through those dark phases.
Absolutely, because I absolutely believe in life. We're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. And for you in this instance, you've literally lived the life that you wanted and transformed and learned in the process. Now you're just sending the elevator down and making it easy for other people to learn. And I joked earlier, Sophia, and I say everything is made in China. Even you were made in China.
That is very true. Yeah, that's right. Because I say that a lot. That's a very good, interesting way to put it. I usually say that a lot of my personality was shaped in China because I came very receptive, very open for that transformation. Um, because I saw, other classmates, because at the time I came with other classmates, and I saw that they were very closed to absorbing, or to being. They were in their own ways transformed, but they were not really that open for the process. I remember when I arrived in Beijing, I had zero research about what was the school like, what was the dorms like. I just wanted to explore it firsthand. I
Mm.
just wanted to really leave it from this perspective of I am here now in the moment present, and I'm, just open for whatever life has to bring me and I am to contribute with. And I think that kind of mindset really made a lot of positive impact in how I was then influenced by the environment, by everything. But I do know that in many ways, the way I think sometimes, I see that I was very much influenced by the way Chinese people think, even the way, Chinese people are very humble. It's cultural, right? And I love that actually. I love that because it's there's a lot of learning that happens when you are humble. And it's not humble in the sense of I am not capable or I am it's not about denying your qualities or any of that, but it's really about being open to learning from others. And when I see these days, even on a geopolitical level, right, you see the US, China, right, these kind of conflicts. And like China has this posture of being open for learning, being open for collaboration. And in a way, I think that's not present in some other countries that have this idea I have everything figured out. I already know everything. I don't need you to tell me. And this is ego. This is a big ego on a country level. And I like the way, China really made, I think it made me a better person in many ways.
Absolutely. And I quite like you introduced us to the word fambien, that convenience. If that is baked in a culture, it influences everything else that happens. Like just like in our culture, I don't know if you know anything about my sort of African heritage, but we have a statement called Ubuntu, which is basically I am because you are. And if something is baked and you've got a word for it in your culture, that means that becomes a way of life, that becomes a way of being and things of that nature. Now, obviously, there's so much that we can uncover and things of that nature. So if people maybe stumble upon this video and have learned quite a lot about yourself, what is it that they can get if they decide to work with you? What do you help people with?
So I currently work as a life coach. I am an ICF and Jungian coach. So that means that I work with people's minds to get their potential, right? To really make them realize their potential. Because I think sometimes we by ourselves cannot really fully see our potential. And if we have someone to guide us through the process, it becomes a lot easier. I work with NLP, neuro linguistics programming, and also NLP. Sorry, I already said NLP, hypnosis as well. So essentially, my passion is the subconscious mind, because it's that idea that we are about 80 to 90% subconscious content. And only 10% of our mind, which is the conscious mind, is aware, right? It's what we are aware of. But it's only 10%. So that means that a lot of times we react in certain ways. You act in a way that you feel jealous, or you feel like envy, or you have like a very reactive response, or whatever it is. And you were like, wow, what was this? Like, I have no idea how I reacted this way. And it's because it was unconscious, right? It is something, there is something within you that you are not looking at on a conscious level, but it's deep down in your subconscious. And everything is in the subconscious mind, really. The subconscious is just this big pool of data that you collect from even before you are born. Okay, because there's a lot of studies in epigenetics as well, which is one of my areas of interest as well, which is this idea that we already inherited a lot of information from our ancestors. And this is not only DNA, this is actual information shared on a collective level. So sometimes we are dealing with some issues in our life right now, and we cannot find a cause in our lives. And that's because it's a pattern that was inherited from our ancestors, right? And that still resurfaces in us, like that is still within us. And we have these big power and big responsibility to work with that and to heal, not only for ourselves, but also for the generations to come, right? Because when you do the work within you, you are also doing the work, for the next generations in many ways. And this is also part of what I'm doing right now. So I'm getting certified in family constellations. I have studied GSR, which is a similar approach also about family dynamics and how trauma gets passed on from generation to generation, basically.
Absolutely. Right.
So these are ways that people can work with me. And there's also the training part. So I also do soft skills trainings. I'm usually open to, also understand what are the needs for the company or the client. But essentially, archetypes, Jungian psychology applied to coaching and business are some of the topics that I speak about the most.
Absolutely. I quite like that you've literally taken in all that you've learned, and now you've packaged it in such a way that your life story and your experiences are now just easily accessible for people to tap into. And if they can get a hold of you, who knows where you are in the world right now. I mean, but you're different places. Where on the internet at least can they get a hold of you so that they can maybe get started on their journey?
Yes, so I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to reach out to me. Of course, email. So Xavier .sof@gmail.com. And I'm working on my website right now, so it should come up soon. But it's not completed yet. So I think those would be the ways.
Great stuff. Now, Sofia, I've really enjoyed this time around. Not only was it on a personal note where I'm just experiencing somebody who's had close proximity with Jackie Chan, and I'm just counting the 6 degrees of separation on there, but I feel like your journey, your life, and everything else that you've done somehow is akin to a rite of passage, where somebody goes on a journey to self-discovery, comes across a few things, a few lessons, and now you're sending the elevator down to help others be, do, and have happier existence. And yeah, I can't thank you for the lessons learned and the information that you've gathered and things of that nature. But what's next? What can we now anticipate? I mean, you've climbed the highest mountains, gone to the deepest parts of the ocean, and yet, you're still young, and I feel like you're only just getting started.
Yeah, I think I get that feeling as well. I don't think I've been to the top of the mountains that I want to get to yet. And I also think there's a lot more in the ocean to explore. And so I think it's going in those two directions. I think I love that, actually. I love to explore deep down what is there under the surface, and then bring it to the surface and see, wow, what can I do with this? And, eventually climb the mountain and see what's up there. So that is a very powerful metaphor. Actually, in Jungian coaching, I work a lot with metaphors in NLP and hypnosis as well. So that's beautiful, the way you put it. I think every 9 years, and from an archetypical perspective, every 9 years, I think there's big changes in people's lives. It's like a journey, as you said, you called it a journey, and that's how it actually, on an archetypical perspective, it works. And I feel that it's been 9 years in Asia, right? And I think for the past year, I've already been exposed also to work with different projects. So I'm currently working with the World Academy for the Future of Women. So I'm working with women in different countries. I've been to India, where I work with a group of 100 women, then to Mexico, the same thing. So this work with groups, especially in university settings, is something that I'm so passionate about, and that I feel that it's where I create the most impact. It's just like, especially young women. I just love working with them, and in this space of being a woman, and, being a woman is a different experience in different parts of the world, and different challenges. There's a lot of trauma as well, because, people have been through a lot, but specifically, I think women in many ways, and in different parts of the world, have been through a lot. And so there's always this, I love to create this safe space as well, whenever I go to these countries. And so I feel a deep calling to these different parts of the world and to work with large groups. So I'm really looking forward to, to grow that way, and to be able to positively impact different people. And knowing that we cannot really have control on what we really impact, is more about planting seeds, and like leaving the seeds, and just, whatever the outcome is, like, we'll never know. Sometimes even now, I receive text messages from my past students, past coachees, past members of the academy, and they are like, that sentence that you told me, that quote that you told me back then, that one thing that you told me back then, completely changed everything, right? Completely, like, it was exactly what I needed to hear. And so I really love synchronicity, and the idea that we are connected with the right people at the right time, but we need to do our part. And it's not about ourselves. It's not about the ego part. It's not about proving ourselves, but it's about being there, because there's people waiting for you to arrive there, and to create that with them, to co-create that with them. So I think that's what I'm looking forward, moving forward. Yeah, let's see.
Absolutely. And I think those people that were waiting have been watching this episode right now, and are experiencing, the love that you literally have, not only for yourself, but for the world, and anybody else who would have the opportunity to be touched by this message. And I can't thank you enough for the time you've spent with us, the grace you've given us with your story, and just sharing with us what is actually possible. And one thing that I learned from this is no matter what's happening in your life, you did mention this, like it might look like it's all cloudy and you're in a cocoon, but be sure to pay attention, because I think it was Steve Jobs that said that you cannot connect the dots looking forwards, but you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And once you've done that, be sure to be keeping your eyes wide open, because one day you'll have a good story to tell on the Online Prosperity Show, and you've done just that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for holding the space and for connecting the dots in that beautiful way, because that's the thing. Sometimes I say a lot, and then I think you have that ability to kind of summarize things in such a beautiful way. So I really appreciate that. And who knows, 9 years from now, I'll be here again with you speaking about another journey, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, definitely I'll be here for that. And we'll reach out actually to see what the clock has said. So I'll put a reminder and see, yeah, where you've taken yourself in the next 9 years. But thank you so much for sharing your remarkable journey with us today. I think your experiences just really highlight the beauty of embracing, change, facing fears, and just pursuing one's calling. Because so many people, if you ask them, they haven't left the state or the street they grew up in, so they don't quite know anything beyond the shops around them. And well, there's a whole world out there with people experiencing experiences, faces, and stories. And if we can just embrace that, imagine how good the world would be.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, thank you so much. I mean, obviously, there's so much for you to unpack in there. And if Sofia's story resonated with you, I want you to consider how her insights might actually be able to be applied into your own life. So perhaps it's time you actually took a leap that you've been contemplating, and maybe just buy that air ticket, go somewhere, exchange messages with somebody from across the world. We can do that these days without even having to leave our own homes. And, with the advent of the internet, find out how other people are surviving, and you could learn a thing or two from that. Or if you're still a little bit nervous, just visit Sofia's website. I'll be putting all those links on there, and maybe explore her book on Amazon for in-depth knowledge before you, jump into something that you might not be ready for. And I can't thank you enough, Sofia. And for those that are watching, join us in our next episode, where we're going to be discussing ideas on how to cultivate a happier existence. And if you found value in today's conversation, just share this episode with somebody who might benefit from it. There's a lot of people that just really need that spark, that jolt that will get them to start living life a little bit more, or experiencing life, without the ego and everything else that comes along with it. And if somebody shared this video with you, thank them, because they've seen something in you that you've probably never seen in yourself before. And I want you to remember one thing: your journey to prosperity just starts with a single step. Why not take it today? Bye for now.